letting me come speak to you. I'm going to try to make this as quick as I can, but still give you an idea of what we're trying to do. The neighborhood center did start in 1969. We rented a little storefront on Clara and Volusia in DeLand to distribute government food. And 43 years later, we're in a big 2-story house in DeLand. We see about 50, 60 people a day coming in for food, for clothing, for help with rent, water bills, electric bills, transportation, shelter, food. We've obviously done something right in those 43 years to still be around. I think what we've done is pay attention. We've paid attention to the clients that come in, what they need, what we can give them, how they can help themselves. When I worked there, I thought that was my goal. Find out what the problem is, because it's not always as obvious as you think. And then find out what we can do for them, what they can do for themselves, what other agencies can do for them, which meant we had to pay attention to what was happening in the community, who was doing what, how could we help them, how could they help us, where could we get the grants. We are big now, in just amazing to me what has happened in those 40-some years. We have shelter for mostly adults, very, very few children that we help. We have transitional housing for, in 2 homes that we got through grants. One is a co-ed home, so there are, I think, 6 women, 4 men in that, and 8 or 10 men in the other one. These we got through grants. These are transitional housing, so they can stay there 9 months to a year. They have to be working or on disability. All of our residents are drug-free, non-alcoholic. That's a problem we don't deal with. And these people pay us $75, $80 a week. And we have emergency housing for adults in our main building and in the warehouse. That sounds pretty awful, but actually we have food underneath, and then we have emergency housing there. And they of course don't pay anything, but they're all adults and they're all go out to work. We have 1.5 families. We have one house that we got ages ago that can keep one family. Again, that's transitional housing, 6 to 9 months, maybe a year. And then a 2-story house where on the bottom we could keep one woman and a child, and then on the top floor 1 woman. And that's transitional housing. A long time ago, we had 2 apartments for emergency family housing, up to a month, and a waiting list for that. And that's been gone. We lost those apartments over 10 years ago and have not had family housing since. And in emergency housing, there is no family emergency housing in West Volusia. None. We'll be the first one. There are 2,000 homeless children in Volusia County. So it's hard. And as you have been seeing, a lot of these people live on the edge, the people that are in the houses. We try, of course, to keep people from being homeless, as that's the easiest and that's the cheapest, and that's why we try to get grants and raise money for rent, for help with water, and for help with electric. Keep them in there, if possibly can. Counsel them as to how they can spend their money, how they can use it wisely so they don't lose that house. But even 20, 30 years ago, we had this waiting list for families in the emergency shelter, in the emergency apartments. And we had then public housing, which we don't have now, which is a huge loss. But we had that for over 30 years. So the opportunity came to buy a house, a decrepit old house, Well, we have a house next to us that's no longer decrepit, which has that one family in it for transitional housing. Then there was a house next to it we thought we could buy at a short sale. But we got into problems. The banks, for some reason or other, think would rather keep the house than sell it for X amount of money. They'll keep it to hold it for X plus 10. But then the house beside that, which was used as a rooming house, had 4 apartments in it. Short sale again. We were able to get this we were able to get this one for $35,000, and then we knew, we had to remodel it. So, any of you have ever remodeled? We were trying to be very, very realistic about what this was going to cost us, and what we were doing was scary. This was a lot of money that we were pledging to the community, that we were going to be able to do this. So we got the house for $35,000. We had the money pledged. By the time we started, we had about, I think, $75,000 pledged on hand. So we thought we're okay. We bought the house for $35,000, and then we start remodeling, and we're going to make it nice. This is going to be a place people are not only going to be safe in and secure, and they're going to be happy. They're going to be pleasant. This is going to be a place that any of us would go in and take our kids. So we've had to do everything. And we're doing it right, and we have fabulous contractors, a lot of people giving time, energy, lumber, money, and we've got almost $90,000 now. And we've discovered that the roof is terrible shape. We thought it was fine for a while, but it's evidently the guy who owned this before and obviously went bankrupt was doing everything on the cheap. And he did that with the roof, so I think it's got 4 layers of shingles, one on top of the other, not put on very well, I guess, and a lot of rotten wood underneath it. So we're taking down all of that stuff. We've got to go to the wood underneath it and repair that wood. We find out things like you've got to have fire retardant paint on your stairs, and this kind of, and the air conditioning system isn't working right. So it's costing us a little more than we thought, obviously. We still don't have, with the money we've raised since then, enough to do the remodeling. And then we have to have this beautiful house with its 4 apartments, where we're going to keep families. We're defining a family as at least 1 adult with legal custody of at least 1 child. Now the apartments on the bottom floor, those 2, are fairly big, so we can put big families in there, smaller families up top, anywhere from a few weeks to a few months. We're thinking of 3 months as the maximum amount of time. So we're going to be very careful who we put in there. These are going to be people who have an end game, who have an exit strategy. And there are just thousands of people like that, because it is so easy to lose your home. Because it is so easy. I was talking to friends, this was some time ago, about how important $200 could be to a family. And they were thinking, what $200? What can $200 do for you? Because we were all lucky, $200, and you come and go. And $200 can mean losing everything. Because if you can't fix your car, you can't get to work, you will be fired. And if you're fired and can't get another job, you might lose your house. And if you lose your house, you might lose your kids. So it's sort of like some kind of ghastly nursery rhyme, what happens when you lose the $200. So we're in there doing our best for all this time, trying to make sure that doesn't happen to people. And now we want to try to catch more of the people that happens to. You can have a job and lose your house. You can just get a job, but you aren't going to get paid for 3 weeks. And when you get that pay, you're not going to have enough out of that paycheck to get into a house, because you know what you need. You need security for the house, you need You need a deposit for your water, a deposit for your electric bill. It costs a fortune just to get in. So you can be trapped, even with a job, in a car, or in somebody's living room, or in a motel, which you can't get out of, with maybe 3 kids in one room. So these are the people we'll look for. Okay, you give them a month, they get their first paycheck, you give them another month, they get their second paycheck, and then they can get into a house, and they're okay. There's some people who need 2 jobs. One of them gets sick, you only have 1 job, you gotta wait for that disability check to get into a house, because you can't make it on 1 job. You can all think of the scenarios, I know. And I could go on and on about them, but fortunately, I don't have enough time, so you don't have to hear all the stories. I did help found the neighborhood center, and I've been on the board on and off. I'm on the board now. I worked as a caseworker there for about 15 years, split by the time off. And I sort of learned on the job how to do this. But I learned most of all from the clients, from the people who came in there. I learned a lot about courage and generosity and grace and patience. And I learned a lot from the children. And the children are the ones that will break your heart. And they're the ones we have not been able to serve well enough. And that's what we're trying to do with Heart House. And I'm coming here to plead with you to help us with that, because once we get it open, we're going to need about 2,000, well, we're figuring at least 20,000 a year just to maintain it and to pay the bills, because we're not asking for anything from these people. So 24,000 maybe a year after that. So we're really putting ourselves out there, and we're really hoping that you can help us. So thank you again for letting me tell you about this. I think Judy passed out brochures, so we'll see what happens. Thanks.